I want to show you how most people grow their business versus how you should grow your business. The way I suggest you do it is a lot easier, it's a lot faster, and it's a way to get realistic, fast growth. We got to look at the data so I can show you exactly how to do this. When you see it, it'll make sense. It won't be a mystery, and then I think you're more likely to do it. So let's have a look at the data. I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you how to get 4x the growth of most people for roughly about the same amount of work.
To set this up, let's imagine you're currently a $1 million business. Okay. Your goal is to grow to 1.3 million. So you're going to add 300,000 in revenue. You sell work per service at $40 a visit. You do 33 visits a year. That generates $1,320 per year per client in revenue. Your numbers will be different. They could be bigger, they could be smaller. You could sell $100 per service work, $500 per service work, $10 per service work. Doesn't matter. The math is still roughly the same. The concept all still applies. Please don't get stuck on that. You've got lots of ways to grow your business. It's the end of the year. You're thinking about next year, and you're saying to yourself, how are we going to capture $300,000 in new revenue growth next year? There's lots of ways you can do it. The most common way that we each think of is we are going to need to do more sales and marketing to get that growth. And so our default is that we're going to focus on driving more leads. So let's say last year, as a baseline, your business had 400 leads. And on a side note, everything I'm about to talk about illustrates why it's really important to be tracking your data and understand the data. And there's a lot of software systems that will do it. So I really encourage you to be tracking the data if you're not. Last year, you had 400 leads. We'll call that the baseline. This year, to grow our business, if you look down here in red, by 300,000 in revenue, we would need to increase our leads by 63%. Now, why is that? It's because when a lead comes in, we have a 35% conversion rate, meaning we convert 35% of every lead that comes in. 35 of every 100, they become a client. And then I gave you the illustration of how much revenue a new client drives. A new client drives, in my example, it could be anything, $1,320. Okay? So again, where does our brain go? Our brain goes to create 300,000 in new revenue, I need to sell more clients. But there are so many other ways to do this. And this is my argument that this is one lever in your business. You can pull on the sales and marketing lever, but there's all these other levers that you could pull on that will make this more achievable. You might say to yourself, if you're a bigger company, it wouldn't be that hard to generate 652 leads. Well, I think for a lot of companies, that would feel quite difficult. They have to ramp up their SEO, their AdWords, their Facebook, the sales team. Who knows what's encountered or what's involved? It really depends on the size of the transaction and the transaction size, meaning what you charge. And it depends on the type of client you're selling to. It depends on what service you're providing, so many factors. But generally, increasing your sales and marketing by 63% is a big lift for the majority of companies. And it's a bigger and bigger lift as you get bigger. So as an alternative, if you sort of focus on this $300,000 number, what are some ways we can get there? And the goal of this video is to show you some of the most common ways you can get there in a different way to think about this. I could literally talk about this topic right here for hours and zero in on any of these topics. And so if it's of value to you, if you want me to go deeper on any area, you want me to answer questions, put it in the comments and that'll tell me what videos I need to create to help you in the future. But let's approach this in a different way. One more thought. The biggest driver of all the things you can do, the thing that will probably have the single greatest impact on your business is in fact this one. It's leads. It's getting more people into the top of the funnel, more leads, more potential clients in the top of the funnel. That's probably the single greatest way to grow the business. The second one, which I'll come back to, is reducing cancellations. It's called churn. So stopping so many people from leaving your business and walking out the door and taking their revenue with them. These are the two, like if there's an 80-20, these are the 80-20. But now let's talk about And I can zero in on that just a little bit more in a moment. But let's talk about some different levers you can pull on so you don't have to get all your growth out of this one lever, which is dumping more leads into the top of your funnel to generate more business. So let's just imagine that what we do is we grow leads by only 10%. Just doing that, this is why I called it 80-20, just 10% more leads will drive $200,000 in revenue. Now, why is that? You're not getting $200,000 in revenue from 35% of 40 leads, or in other words, what would that be? That would be 14, 28. You're not getting $203,000 in revenue from 14 leads. Remember the baseline? Well, we're assuming that you are still doing all the work you did last year. You're working just as hard as you did last year to drive the same number of leads. And so all you've done is you've increased leads by 40 or clients by, I guess that would have been about 14. So you can see if you did nothing, if you just do every single thing you did last year, you're going to get revenue growth of 184 in this model because these are your baseline numbers. That should be somewhat encouraging. So what we've now got to do, it probably feels like a lot of work just to do what you did last year. But now what we've got to do is we've got to grow that. We've got to get the roughly $16,000 in additional revenue we need. So let's just play with this. Let's say we're going to get 20%. We're going to get 20%. I screwed that all up. There we go. We're going to get 20% from new leads. So that gets us a good ways there. We're still about 80 below. Now we're going to improve our conversion rate by, we're going to do 20% on that. I'm making these numbers up as I go. All right. So now we're converting 42% of clients. So we're more efficient. The leads we're bringing in, we're now more efficient. And this is a great area to invest your time because this is where you throw a lot of money at the problem. This is where you make the money way more efficient. So this is a fantastic place to spend effort. Let's say we're going to generate 20% more transactions. May not be realistic in your business. Like for example, if this were a lawn mowing example and the grass just doesn't grow, well, you're probably not going to really be able to drive an additional 7 transactions. But if you're a business where maybe you're selling a quarterly service and you add 1 additional service, it's now a 5-visit service per year, that might be realistic. Or maybe you have we'll use a fertilization weed control example, and you have a 6 application program and you now add a 7th, or your pest control and you add an additional 1. You can very quickly, in some service offerings, window cleaning, power washing, roof gutters, etc., you can often add 1 visit, and that can have a nice impact on number of transactions. Okay? So this is probably unrealistic if you want to use this as a mowing example. Now, we could also increase our pricing by 20%. We're way over what we needed to accomplish here, okay? So let's just take some of these back. Well, what do you know? Pretty close. And this is going to illustrate my point. You could play with these numbers all day long, but it's and I don't want to drag it out. I want to illustrate this point, and then I'll move on to one more item that's really important to understand. So instead of figuring out how can I increase my marketing budget by 60, 70, 100%? How do I grow my sales team to be able to close that many new leads? How do I do all the work it's going to take to be able to handle a 60 or 70% increase in leads? Remember, that's what we modeled first to get our 307,000. What if we just increase marketing and the ability to close those leads and the ability to follow up on those leads quickly by 20%? And then we worked on activities that allow us to convert faster. Follow up, answering the phone live, using text messaging versus just email. There's a whole variety of things, improving our sales script, listening to calls, recorded sales calls, listening back to what works and what didn't work, improving our own skills or coaching our team. There are an unlimited number of ways that we can drive conversion. And we can take it, in my example, from 35 to 42. That is very realistic. And then we increase the number of transactions by 5%, meaning We're just selling a little bit more. We're doing just a little bit. We're showing up a little more frequently. In this case, only 5% more. And then we're raising the price we're selling. So when we write an estimate, we're writing our estimates at 10%. So it's the equivalent of a price increase, but not on the existing client base, just to the new clients. So we've increased the pricing 10%. So you've pulled on 4 levers here. And this is all way easy. In fact, this is the easiest of all. You could make a decision tomorrow and raise the prices. More transactions, probably just a little creativity, and how do you sell that? There's probably 3 levers, 3 things you can do to increase your conversion. And then this is probably as simple as upping your budget, and you may already have the capacity within your current sales team to close the business without adding an additional person. How much easier is that than getting all of your growth from this one category? Okay? But then you've got a few other options. You can think about expansion revenue. So let me zero some of these out real quick. Let's imagine we could get 20% of our clients to buy something else. So again, just for simplicity, I was using a simple example of mowing a lawn. Most people can imagine that type of a service, even though they probably don't provide it. Let's say we could add something to our business, such as trimming the bushes, fertilizing the lawn, killing the bugs, whatever the scenario is, and we could sell it to 20% of our clients. And that one service, trimming the bushes, drove an extra $200 per year, which is incredibly low. That'll drive an extra $35,000 a year. I'd argue that number is probably closer to $700. And that right there, that one thing has closed the gap. I tend to advocate for keeping your business simple and not adding too many services, but there is absolutely a time in a business where expansion revenue, selling more to existing clients, is warranted. Or another lever you could pull on, you simply raise the price. Have you not taken a price increase in years and your clients frankly need a price increase? By raising your pricing on existing clients by 10%, meaning $4, you drive $100,000 in new revenue, you've almost closed the gap. So what have we talked about here? We've talked about 5-6 levers: driving new leads, improving your conversion rate, closing more of those leads, selling more of the same thing you already sell to the client, an additional visit, more service, a higher service level, raising the price on new, meaning when we sell the service to the client, a new client, new client in this example, we're selling it for a little bit more, 5%, 10%. This is the very best place to test price increases. If you have no problem selling at a higher service, you will have no problem generally raising the prices on your existing clients. Expansion, adding something else we can sell to the client, raising the price on existing clients. This is one that almost every company should be doing, that they probably haven't done it. This is the silent killer of most companies. This is why most people hate their business. This is why most people think the industry they're in is bad. It all goes back to incorrect pricing. And I'm not going to go into this one, but I have a video on this topic, and it's about reducing churn. If you can take your churn down by 25%, so in this case, if you're losing 18% of your clients, you're losing $180,000 a year you have to replace in income before you even start to get the $300,000 in goal growth that we wanted. So think about that. If you're losing $180 a year in revenue, you want to grow by 300, you have to sell enough revenue that's the equivalent of $480,000 a year in new sales. That's a big lift. Model that number out here. It's a lot. Whereas if you could bring this down by 25%, or for some companies that have a real problem, 50%, it's a game changer. I've got a video on that one that really dives into why that is one of the single biggest problems in the majority of companies, and it's one of the things you want to focus on. So as you think about your growth for next year, don't just think about sales and marketing. Think about all the other levers you can pull in your business, and how can you get a little from each? A little from leads, a little from conversion, a little from price increase to new clients. And that's how you get the growth year after year. And it's way easier. It's way more scalable. It's way easier to manage. It's way easier to staff for. If you have specific questions where I can elaborate, or help you better understand this, let me know in the comments and I'll create the video to help you out. Thanks a lot.